Ralph Levinson, Health Science Professor Emeritus, UCLA. As an eye physician and a surgeon for almost 30 years, as well as a researcher at UCLA, understanding vision has been close to my heart. I'm also interested in the broader topic of what perception in general tells us about our world and ourselves. In this series of talks, I will ask the question, how do we piece together a world, a universe, and more importantly, a life? Everything we know, all experience, is a product of changes in state, changes in energy that we have the tools to perceive. We sense changes of energy and light as vision, changes in pressure as touch and sound, molecular kinetic energy as heat. We have receptors that change in response to chemicals such as smell, taste, and pain. The ancient Buddhists had a stroke of genius in considering the brain's responses themselves a kind of metasensory system. In the brain as sense organ, we cobble together a perceived world from the other senses, and we also sense our thoughts and emotions. We experience our thoughts. We have gut feelings. We have dreams and visions, even though our eyes are closed. We hear sounds, music, conversations as perceptions in our minds, thoughts, memories, despite no input from our ears at the moment. We say, I see what you mean, or I hear you when we grasp the meaning of a communication. We cobble together a world, a life from these experiences. We do so in a framework we inherited as a web of interactions going back to time before time. Yet, is that the same world of ultraviolet light that a bee sees, of infrared that a snake perceives, of sonar in a bat or dolphin, of magnetic fields perceived by a migrating songbird? Meet Simon Laplace, a French Enlightenment polymath and scientist. He was a philosopher, a mathematician, and he hobnobbed with the elite of both science and power. On a winter's evening in 1827, Laplace lay dying in his bed. His friend, the mathematician Baron Poisson, related years later that he tried to comfort Laplace. He lauded his life and accomplishments, thinking that on his deathbed that would make Laplace happy. Laplace grew thoughtful. He responded, but we do chase phantoms, don't we? Now that's how it's usually translated in English. But in French, it's really l'homme ne poursuit que des chimeras. Mankind only ever chases after chimeras. Chimeras? What's a chimera? A chimera is a being composed of other beings, and chimeras go way back. Let's go to ancient Egypt. We know that there were many gods that had forms with human bodies and animal heads. Here we see the Sphinx, the classic Sphinx with a lion's body and a human head. In the Book of the Dead, there was Amut, who we see here, crocodile, lion, hippo, though looks maybe a little more leopard than lion. Still, Amut was a demoness who was a hodgepodge of fearful beasts. In the judgment scene in the Book of the Dead, we see that the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of truth, Ma'at. And if the heart was too heavy, heavier than this feather, Amut would eat the person's soul. Gone forever, no afterlife, oblivion to the ancient Egyptians. A simply horrible fate. There's also Sekhmet, a personal favorite. Sekhmet was a chimera with the head of a lioness and the body of a woman. She was the vengeful daughter in the eye of the sun god Ra, who is said to breathe fire like the desert's hot winds. She was a war god, and she brought plagues, but she was also a chimera in other ways. She also healed plagues. She was a chimera in her manifestations. She was also a manifestation of Hathor, the cow goddess, who was maternal and protective. Here we see Hathor with a human woman's face and cow's ears, another chimera. I love this stuff, but it's not really what Laplace would have been thinking. Even though Napoleon had been to Egypt and it was all the rage, Champollion was just first starting to translate ancient Egyptian, and though Laplace may well have known about the visual arts of Egypt, he wouldn't have understood the full input of these chimera. Well, as part of the Enlightenment and an educated European, Laplace may have known about the Greek mythological chimera, a monster part lion, horse, or goat, and snake, as we see here. A monstrous fire-breathing hybrid, the daughter of Typhon, himself a serpentine giant who tried to overthrow Zeus. He certainly would have known about the chimera on Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. These chimera were protectors of the cathedral that warded off evil spirits. They protected the sacred space of the cathedral. And here we see one scanning Paris for incoming threats. We see a theme with these chimera, don't we? They embody our ambiguity, our fears and hopes. They are fearful and dangerous, yet sometimes they were also guardians and protectors. Maybe not exactly what Laplace had in mind, but kind of getting closer. In French usage of the word chimera, including in the 19th century, the connotations of the word could be less mythological and more directly metaphorical, translated into English as wild dreams, illusions, chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. One example from back then, quote, people without judgment or maniacs who draw satisfaction from their Sisyphean pursuits without perceiving the realities that lay before their eyes, unquote. We have ideas without consistency or substance, illusions, a fool's errand, you might say, an obstruction to true perception. And then in the mid-19th century, we have the poet Charles Baudelaire. He wrote a poem called Everyone Has Their Own Chimeras, or To Each His Own Chimera. In the poem, he describes walking in a field so barren that even thistles won't grow. He saw people plodding, stooped over with a heavy weight on their back. The burden on their back was a chimera that reached around with claws, grabbing into their chest. The poet asks one of these stooped over people, hey, what's up with that? And the people trudging along answer, well, what do you mean? This is my life. This chimera it's me, it's part of me. So Baudelaire, chimera as burden, chimera as blind spots. Sometimes we don't even know the burdens we carry. As phantoms, they are invisible, yet somehow kind of seductive. We accept them, we embrace them as they embrace us in their clawing grasp. These chimera, these phantoms, are cobbled together from our expectations, our hopes, our fears, our conditioning, our heuristic toolkit, our shortcuts, our biological inheritance, and our learned experience. What we think we need to survive in the ever-changing world of time and space. And then we project these onto the world, reacting to those projections in a feedback loop that reinforces itself. We reify the phantoms. We make them solid and real. These phantoms may help tame our world for a while, help us make sense quickly out of the onslaught of information we are constantly taking in. Having shortcuts sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't always fit. But on the other hand, we can't reinvent the wheel with every new situation. Sometimes they become blind spots, though, the wrong tools for the wrong job at hand. Now that may fit Laplace better, I think. Let me read you a quote from the Lankavatara Sutra, a 2,000-year-old Buddhist text. Quote, just as space or rabbit horns or a barren woman's child do not exist except as words, such are the projections of existence. Where causes and conditions meet, fools give rise to projections, unable to fathom what is real. Certainly not all that different from Baudelaire in a way. But yet, without dreams, goals, ambitions, how do we navigate our choices, our lives? Do we reinvent the wheel with every new situation? How do we face the hard times without hope, the chance that things might be better, in a world where there are grave challenges, climate change, other environmental degradation, racism, war, injustice, fascism, dehumanizing technology, disease, poverty, personal success and failure, love gained and lost, never guaranteed to last. Perhaps we need a phantom or two to pursue, or at least to inspire us to survive and thrive. Aren't these phantoms part of the great web of being and experience, of mind and matter? Do the phantoms help us navigate our lives, or do they define our lives? Now, I'm not sure if Mark Twain knew about Laplace's deathbed observation or all this when he wrote in a letter to his brother 42 years after Laplace's death, quote, "We chase phantoms half the days of our lives. It is well if we learn wisdom, and even then save the other half," unquote. Twain followed this remark by later explaining, quote, "I'm for it. I must go on chasing them. Then I'm done with literature, wherewith to please the public. I shall write to please myself then," unquote. Without chimeras, phantoms, would there be great art? What about compassion, suffering? Are they phantoms? Aren't they true? Are they just projections? I mean, it comes down to who are we? There's the Platonic Delphic maxim, know thyself. There's a 13th century Japanese Zen master, Dogen, to study Buddhism is to study the self. There's Shakespeare's to thine own self be true. This is the great question through the ages, right down to pop culture. Who are you? If you don't know, can you really love yourself? And if you can't love yourself, can you love others? The ancient Buddhists certainly devoted much time to these questions. How do we know what we know? Who are you? What can we learn by examining perception? In the Surangama Sutra, another ancient Buddhist text, Buddha challenges his disciples to clarify the nature of perception, starting with vision. He asks, where is vision located? He's really asking, where are you located? What is left when you peel back the layers of phantoms? Buddha starts his questioning with the eye. Well, let's look at vision, and let's start with the eye. So a bit of homework. Draw an eye, quick sketch. Go ahead, try it. Nothing fancy. How do you see an eye?